George Orwell once said, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Now, I would like to say the same thing about books, actually. All books are equal, but some books are more equal than others. In other words, when it comes to reading books, I don't think we should read all books in the same fashion, in the same way. Because some books can be read as a form of both education and entertainment. Some books can be read as just education. And some books shouldn't be read to be in the first place because they are a complete waste of time. And they're full of bullshit that's not gonna benefit you in any shape or form. So today I want to talk about how to read books. Now, spent a lot of time myself reading books, especially in my late teens. Well, I don't believe in teenagehood, but let's just use the term teens and early 20s. I mean, even now I still read books. But basically, I went from a boy who hated reading. I didn't like to read at all. I mean, I mentioned this before. My father used to buy me magazines, so I would read, but I would just look at the pictures and that's it. I wouldn't read at all because I wasn't interested in any of that shit. All those magazines, all those stories that my father used to buy me, I wasn't interested. None of that shit sparked any interest in me whatsoever. So I didn't read it. So, first of all, when it comes to reading books, the first thing that you need to do to be able to read is to read what interests you. I believe this is the first step to do if you are not a big book reader. Read what interests you because let's face it, book reading is a time-consuming activity. And you don't want to spend a lot of time reading something that you don't like, you are not going to remember anyway, and it's not gonna benefit your life in any shape or form. So why read it in the first place? So you need to start by reading what interests you. That way you're gonna develop, you're gonna develop your own way of reading. You're gonna start to enjoy reading. You're gonna repair your relationship with the practice of reading. That's what's gonna happen when you're gonna start to read what interests you. Because I believe the majority of boys, at least, hated reading when they were kids. I didn't like to read, like I've said, and I think many guys would agree with me and would relate to what I'm saying. Because when we were kids, we had too much energy. We want to do something. We want to be active. I wanted to go and play. I wanted to play video games. I wanted to ride a bike. I wanted to jump on trees or whatever. I didn't want to sit down and read. But once I found what I wanted to read, what I wanted to learn, once I found that thing that sparked interest, that made me curious, that gave me an incentive to actually sit my ass down and read, then I started to enjoy reading. And I branched off into other interests later on. So when it comes to reading books and how to read books, first of all, start with something that interests you. And in this case, I think if you are watching this video, you probably are into self-improvement. So maybe you can pick up some self-improvement books and give them a try and see if you're gonna repair your relationship with the practice of reading. Second thing, when it comes to how to read books, after you start reading what interests you, the way with which you can progress when it comes to reading is to dedicate time to reading. And what I mean by that, I know a lot of people say, well, you can read on the bus, you can read on the way to work, you can read on the beach, A lot of people bring a book and they read on the beach or whatever. I don't believe in that, to be honest. I don't believe you can read, especially on the bus, especially in the bus, man. Because I've been in buses before, and I did read in buses actually. But the type of book you read in a bus has to be light. It shouldn't be something that requires mental energy. Because some books you really need to focus, you really need to exercise. You need to read them. You need to use a lot of brain power to be able to read certain books. I mean, if you're reading a cookbook, of course, you can read in the bus. If you're reading some, some light commercial story, novel, whatever, something light, Not against reading light stuff, but if it's something light, yes, you can read that way. Otherwise, if you are going to read good books, you have to dedicate time. You have to dedicate time to read. Time during the day or at night, whatever you experiment, and you see whichever time fits your schedule and your style and your personality. And once you do that, once you dedicate time, once you find your own period of time in which you can sit down actually and read, the next thing that you need to do is you need to eliminate all distractions. Now, when it comes to eliminating distractions, that means turn off your notifications from your phone, close the door, do anything that's going to eliminate distractions as much as possible. Now, in my case, what I do is I like to listen to music, instrumental music, especially lo-fi music. I have a very cool playlist on Spotify that I turn on whenever I want to read, and it really helps me to focus, helps me to relax, focus, and I go into a flow state of reading whenever I put this music on when I read. So yeah, find the kind of music that relaxes you, that puts you in the mood to read in a distracted-free space, and sit down and read. So, read what interests you, dedicate time for reading, and eliminate distractions. Now, here's the next thing that you need to do if you want to read properly. And this tip is actually you can use it when you are reading non-fiction books or books that are practical, So you have to read actively. And what I mean by that is when you read the book, you don't just read and go. When you see a paragraph or an idea that strikes you, that gives you that aha moment, you don't just read it and go. No, you have to highlight it. You have to take notes. Perhaps you can even try to even write on your phone. Try to summarize the idea in your own words. That way, it's really gonna stick in your head. It's really gonna stick in the back of your head. Once you take something and you start to write it in your own voice with your own words, it actually sticks. It's how I used to actually learn a lot of things from books. I would write them. I would read something and I would try to write it in my own way, try to say it with my own voice and my own words. So don't just read. You have to read actively. Now, I'm talking about practical books or even theoretical books, books that are about theory, not even about praxis. So yeah, you have to summarize key concepts from the book you are reading with your own words if you have to. And once you do that, you're not only going to remember those key concepts, but you are going to remember them in your own words, in your own way. So it's not going to sound like you are just repeating verbatim what the author had written in the book. So yeah, read books that interest you, dedicate time for reading, distraction-free environment, read actively, take notes, highlight, summarize key concepts in your own words. And the next thing that you need to do that I have here is take short breaks. I mean, I've talked about the Pomodoro technique before, so if you are reading, you can also use the Pomodoro technique, which is read for perhaps 25 minutes, take a 10 minutes break, and then read for 25 minutes again, so on and so forth. Of course, you can increase or decrease the time of reading and the break according to your own preference, and it's actually a muscle. You might start with 15 minutes and 5 minutes break, and then you grow into reading for an hour, and then taking 15 minutes break, and then read for another hour. So just like the focus, your ability to focus, just like a muscle, you need to work it out to make it grow. And the next one is the difference between practical books and theoretical books. So like I've said, if you're reading a theoretical book, a book about ideas, a book about theory, you have to read it actively and you have to try to summarize those key concepts in your own words. Otherwise, you're not going to remember anything. You're not going to remember anything. Not only that, you will, I mean, you will remember the key concepts, of course, but it's way better to try to summarize with your own words those key concepts. Now, when it comes to practical books, it's the same thing, just that with practical books, you have to take action on whatever you are reading from that book. Now, for me personally, for the past few years, what I've decided to do is I only read classics when it comes to novels. I only read classics. And when it comes to practical books, when it comes to new books, or let's say commercial books, I only read practical books that are going to benefit me somehow. Books where I can find something how to say, something that I can put in practice in real life, because like I've said before, reading is a time-consuming activity. And if you want to read some other books that you might enjoy and you don't have time, that's where audiobooks come into play. You can listen to books while you work out. These books, I also need to talk about audiobooks. These kind of books, these lightweight books, you can listen to them because they are lightweight. But if you want to read something heavyweight, say, you can't really listen to it, because I've tried. One of the books that I actually read, it was a book about rationalism. It was incredibly theoretical, and it's really not an easy book to read to understand the concepts. And I remember I listened to it twice. I was still in university, and I used to commute to university, and I used that time, my commuting time, to listen to audiobooks. And I remember I listened to it twice. And although I listened to it twice, I can hardly put my finger on the key concepts that I've heard from listening. But then I read it once, and I read it the same way I said. I dedicated time. I read it actively, and I gave it all my energy, my mental energy. I wasn't sitting in a car looking at the view and listening to someone speak. No, I would read slowly if I have to, and I would repeat some certain paragraph that emphasize some points, some concept, and I would read it again if I didn't understand this, because it was really difficult to understand. And so with these kind of books, you can't really listen to them. You can't listen to them. You have to sit your ass down and you have to read them actively. So that's the difference between practical books and theoretical books. And I would also say practical books, you can listen to them. You can listen to practical books, because most of the practical stuff is actually easy to understand. It's not like the theoretical stuff. So practical books, you can listen to them. It's fine. So yeah, another way that you can do to make most out of the books you read is to actually discuss the ideas of the book with other people. Maybe you can look up some group on Facebook of that book and join it and discuss the ideas there. That's going to give you an opportunity to actually write those ideas with your own word, and to I'm not going to say verbalize them, but put them into words in your own way. That's going to make those ideas stick deeper in your head, in your mind. So that's also help. And another thing that I would say on this topic is that reading books is not a numbers game. I used to believe it's a numbers game, but it's not. It's actually, in this matter, it's quality over quantity. You don't want to read shitload of books, but you can't remember anything from any of them, and you don't put any of that stuff into action, so it doesn't help you. You just waste your time, basically. You just say, yeah, I've read 100 books this year. Did you actually read them? Did you actually benefit from those books? Did you actually get any benefit from all that time that you've wasted supposedly reading those books? So now I would rather read 5 books and I would read them properly than read 100 books and not read them properly. Yeah, and also another thing, sometimes you might want to read another book twice, more than once. You might want to read it more than once because with some books, you read them the first time and you enjoy them and you learn a lot of things. But then once you read them again, those ideas tend to how to say they tend to you start to see more stuff. You start to realize more things from those ideas. You start to understand on a deeper level on your second reading. That's not to mention the third reading, fourth reading. So you can also reread books. It's going to help you to learn more and to really, how to say, learn by heart, if I might say. You learn what's in that book by heart if you read it multiple times. I'm not suggesting you should do this with all books, but if some book you really enjoy, you really like it, and you want to master it, say some good classic novel, and you want to really know all the details and the scenes, and you want to be able to recall them whenever you want, then perhaps you should read it multiple times. So yeah, that's all I have when it comes to reading books. Like I've said, reading books is a good practice. It's a good skill. You're gonna learn a lot of things. You're gonna learn how to focus. You're gonna learn how to think, how to write, how to synthesize ideas. You're gonna have conversations with great people who are not necessarily still alive. I mean, reading a book is basically talking to the person who wrote the book. Let's just face it. So you have the chance to speak with all these great minds that's lived throughout history. And yeah, read books, be smart about it. And that's it for today's video.